Rain poured steadily over the glass walls of Hamilton and Company, one of the most prestigious law firms in the city. Its marble lobby gleamed with polished elegance, the air filled with the quiet hush of success, designer suits, leather briefcases, and the faint aroma of freshly ground coffee. To most, it was intimidating. To Lila Evans, it was terrifying. She stood clutching her thrift store handbag, her shoes damp from the puddles outside, her worn-out blazer slightly too big on her small frame. She had never set foot in a place this powerful, and she didn't belong here. Not really. But she had no choice. Her younger brother's surgery was only weeks away. The bills had piled up, and the hospital had already warned her. Without a deposit, they couldn't secure a date. Lila had tried everything. Extra shifts at the diner, tutoring, even selling her late mother's jewelry. Nothing had been enough. And then came the opportunity she could hardly believe. A contract job as a personal assistant to Damian Wolf, the elusive CEO of Wolf Enterprises, a man whose net worth could make national headlines. It was supposed to be a blessing. It felt like a lifeline. And yet, the moment she sat in that conference room, a contract slid across the polished oak table, she felt her stomach twist. Damian Wolf sat across from her, tall and impossibly composed, in a tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than her entire apartment's rent for a year. His presence filled the room effortlessly, his eyes sharp like steel as he leaned back, fingers steepled under his chin. "You'll find the contract straightforward," he said, his deep voice smooth and confident. "A generous salary, benefits, and security." Lila hesitated, flipping through the thick pages. At first glance, the offer was indeed dazzling. More money than she had ever dreamed of. Enough to pay for her brother's treatment, clear her debts, and maybe, for once, breathe. But as her tired eyes scanned line after line, something didn't sit right. She frowned, tracing the words with trembling fingers. "Clause 14b, she whispered, reading it again. Her heart started to hammer. Damian noticed her pause. His lips curved into a smile, the kind of smile that looked charming to outsiders but carried a weight of arrogance beneath. "Something wrong, Miss Evans." She swallowed hard. Most people would have nodded politely, signed, and thanked him for the privilege. But Lila wasn't most people. Poverty had taught her to read every word carefully, because traps were always hidden where people least expected. Her voice came out soft but steady. "Excuse me, but this clause is a trap." The room went silent. The smile slid from Damian Wolf's face instantly. His piercing gaze sharpened, as if she had just spoken an unspeakable truth. "What did you say?" His voice was low now. Dangerous. Lila's knees trembled under the table, but she forced herself to meet his eyes. "Clause 14b, she repeated, her voice gaining strength. "It says that in the event of my resignation or termination, I'd owe the company damages equal to a full year of salary. That means if you decide I'm no longer useful, I walk away not just jobless, but in debt to you. That's not security. That's a trap." A tense silence filled the air. The lawyers sitting in the corner, silent observers until now, exchanged startled glances. No one had ever dared speak to Damian Wolf like that. His jaw tightened. For the first time, the unshakable CEO seemed caught off guard. Lila clutched her handbag tighter, but she didn't look away. Inside, she was trembling, terrified that she had just ruined her only chance. But something in her wouldn't let her stay silent. Not when her entire future was at stake. Damian leaned forward slowly, folding his hands over the contract. His dark eyes studied her as though she were a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. "Most people," he said quietly, "don't read past the salary." "I'm not most people," she replied. Her words hung in the air like a challenge. The first meeting ended without a signature. Damian closed the contract and dismissed her with a curt, unreadable expression. Lila walked out of Wolf Enterprises with her heart in her throat, convinced she'd blown the chance of a lifetime. But what she didn't know was that Damian Wolf was far from done with her. For the first time in years, someone had challenged him, called out a hidden clause no one was supposed to question. And that made her dangerous. Or valuable. As Lila rode the bus home that night, clutching her bag against her chest, she had no idea that the CEO she had just defied was already rewriting the game. The ride back to Wolf Enterprises replayed in Lila's mind like a nightmare. Damian Wolf's cold eyes, the sudden dismissal, and the sting of her own bold words. "Excuse me, but this clause is a trap." She should have stayed quiet. She should have signed. Now she'd ruined everything. But the next morning, her phone rang. "This is Wolf Enterprises. Mr. Wolf requests your presence in his office at 9 a.m. sharp. Don't be late." Lila froze. He wanted to see her again. Why? Her first instinct was to decline, but the thought of Jamie, her brother lying weak in that hospital bed, made the decision for her. She couldn't walk away. The black car arrived promptly. The driver didn't make conversation, and Lila's nerves grew heavier with each passing block. By the time the elevator doors opened onto the top floor, she felt as though she were walking into a courtroom where her fate would be decided. Damian Wolf was already there, standing by the massive glass windows that overlooked the skyline. His back was straight, his posture rigid, hands clasped behind him. "Miss Evans," he said, not turning. His voice was deep, low, and unreadable. "You challenged me yesterday. Do you realize most people would consider that unwise?" Lila swallowed. "Yes, but most people don't have a brother who depends on them. I can't afford to step into traps, Mr. Wolf." That made him turn. His eyes locked on hers, and for a flicker of a moment, she saw something she hadn't expected. Not anger, not arrogance, interest. "You're different," he said simply. Then he slid a folder across his desk. "Read." Lila sat carefully, flipping through the new document. Her heart leapt as she realized, Clause 14b was gone. The penalties, the impossible conditions, removed. Her voice shook. "You changed it." Damian leaned forward, his gaze sharp. "I wanted to see if you'd notice again. You passed a test." He had been testing her. "Why me?" she whispered. "Because in a world full of yes men, you said no." His lips curved faintly, not in mockery, but something closer to approval. "And because you might be exactly what I need." That was the beginning. The days turned into weeks, and Lila found herself swept into the whirlwind of Damian Wolf's world. Meetings with powerful men in skyscrapers, strategy sessions that stretched late into the night, negotiations where every word could swing millions. She was his assistant on paper, but it was clear he expected more. He handed her contracts riddled with subtle traps, waiting for her to catch them. He pulled her into boardrooms, forcing her to speak when she wanted to remain invisible. And every time she caught a hidden clause or spoke an uncomfortable truth, she saw that same flicker in his eyes, approval, maybe even pride. But with it came something else. Something dangerous. The way his gaze lingered a second too long when she spoke. The rare, fleeting half-smiles when she surprised him. The soft edge in his voice when he asked, "Did you eat today?" Or when he sent her home in the company car because it was raining again. Lila tried to ignore it. He was her boss. He was a billionaire. He was untouchable. And she had no time for foolish daydreams, not with Jamie's surgery looming. But the heart was a reckless thing. One night, after a brutal 14-hour day, Lila returned to the office to find Damian still working, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. The city lights glowed behind him. He looked human, not the cold, impenetrable CEO, but a man worn down by his own battles. "You should go home," she said gently. He looked up at her, and for the first time, his mask cracked. "You think I don't know what they call me?" His voice was low. "The Wolf. Ruthless. Heartless. Dangerous." Lila's throat tightened. "And are you?" For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he turned back to the window. "Once, I wasn't." The silence between them was thick, heavy with unspoken truths. Lila wanted to ask. She wanted to peel back the layers and see the man beneath. But she didn't. Some questions were too fragile to touch. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. Damian received word of a hostile deal being pushed through by one of his own board members, a betrayal meant to strip Wolf Enterprises of its assets, leaving thousands jobless. "I need eyes I can trust," Damian said, his tone clipped. "You're coming with me." And so Lila found herself once again standing at his side, this time in a mansion filled with men who thought they could outwit the wolf. The negotiations were brutal. Pages of contracts, double meanings, numbers twisted to look harmless. But Damian didn't fight alone. Lila's sharp eyes darted across every line, her clear voice cutting through the deception. This contradicts Clause 7A. This pushes liability onto employees. This isn't a partnership, it's theft. The room shifted. Murmurs spread. The smug faces grew pale. Finally, Damien stood, his presence commanding silence. Gentlemen, if you thought I wouldn't see the trap, you miscalculated. Meeting adjourned. The room emptied. The traitorous board members slunk away. And then it was just the two of them. Damien turned to her slowly, and this time, there was no mask at all. Just raw, unguarded admiration. You saved this company tonight, he said quietly. Lila shook her head. You saved it. I just read carefully. No. His voice was firm. You saw what no one else dared to see. Just like before. Their eyes met, and the world seemed to hold its breath. For one reckless second, Lila thought he might step closer. That he might break every rule and erase the distance between billionaire and poor girl. But then, just as quickly, he pulled back. You should go home, Miss Evans. She didn't sleep that night. Her heart was torn between gratitude, fear, and something she refused to name. But the next day, everything changed. Damien showed up at the hospital. Jamie was sitting up in bed, pale but smiling weakly. Lila was at his side, reddening when she noticed Damien's tall figure in the doorway. She froze. What are you doing here? He stepped inside, his presence filling the small room. I covered the rest of the bills, he said simply. Your brother's surgery is scheduled for next week. Lila's eyes filled with tears. Why would you do that? Damien's gaze softened, and for the first time, his voice carried no arrogance, no mask. Just truth. Because once, someone saved me from a trap I couldn't see. And I've been trying to repay it ever since. For a long moment, neither spoke. Lila's throat tightened, her heart racing. She had thought him untouchable, unreachable. But now she saw him clearly. Not the wolf, not the CEO, but the man. And in that fragile silence, she realized something she had tried so hard to deny. She had saved him, too.